Kia ora koutou. Hopefully we are live on Facebook, and it is our great pleasure this afternoon to have Catherine Chidgey with us. We're so thrilled that you were able to find the time, Catherine, because with your recent long listing for the Ockham Book Awards, congratulations. You must be flat tack.
Oh, it has been quite a busy time. I'm kind of juggling book stuff with teaching full time and, saying hello to our 7-year-old daughter every now and then and finishing the next book and editing the book that's due out mid this year. So,
Oh,
yeah,
gosh. Oh, well,
yeah.
we'll find out all about those, hopefully, or as much as you are allowed and willing to tell us about the new book. But first of all, I'll say to our audience of millions out there, if you have a question for Catherine, just type it in the Facebook comments, and as long as Facebook haven't changed something and Gareth can see them, he will feed them through to me, and we'll get them to Catherine. But first of all, who is Catherine Chidgey? Tell us about yourself.
I don't know. Somehow I find myself in my early 50s, which is a shock. Um,
Um,
so so maybe a decade ago, I would have said, I'm a writer who plods along and isn't very prolific. But since turning 50 under lockdown in 2020, all that's changed, and I think it's something to do with the pandemic and being, stuck in the house. But I think it's also to do with realizing that yes, time is ticking away, and I don't have forever here on this planet, and I have all these ideas for books that I want to write, and so I better get cracking. So I probably would call myself prolific now, a prolific early 50s novelist, creative writing lecturer, mum, and cat fancier.
cat fancier. So there's a lot going on for you. You are a busy lady. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so you studied German literature.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what's the German connection? Because of course the Wish Child was set there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have any German heritage. Irish mostly, but
Mm.
I studied French and German at secondary school. And then when I went to Victoria, I majored in German language and literature, as well as doing a BSc in psychology. And I got a scholarship from the German government from a fund called the DAAD, which is the German Academic Exchange Service. And so I was able to go and study in Berlin for 18 months in the mid 1990s, early to mid 1990s. And the idea was that I would kind of do a whole lot of research over there and come back and write a thesis on a German writer. And while I was over there, I joined a bilingual creative writing group, and I started showing pieces of my writing to that group, pieces which would form part of my first novel, In a Fishbone Church. And I'd never done that at home. I'd never shown anyone my work, but it felt quite liberating being able to do that over there, where it didn't feel like the stakes were so high. It wouldn't matter so much if I fell flat on my face because nobody knew who I was. And so really while I was over there, I thought, well, I'm just going to interpret this literary scholarship quite broadly. And instead of coming back and writing a book about someone else's writing, I think I'd quite like to come back and write my own books. And so that's what I did. I came back and did Bill Manhire's course at Victoria. But Germany really did get under my skin, the language and the people and the history from that time living there. And I think it was always inevitable that it would end up in my writing in quite a significant way.
Yeah, that sounds good. Something's just happened with the light. Never mind. I don't think it's a power cut. It's okay. So you've won so many awards and fellowships. I mean, you're a hugely successful writer. Do you have a favorite thing that's happened to you as a writer? One of those moments where you're like, I can't believe it.
Yeah, there have been a few kind of golden moments, but the one that really sticks in my head as being the first where it truly felt like something magical was happening, was when my first novel, In a Fishbone Church, had come out in New Zealand. This was in 1998, and it was going to be published in the UK the following year. And my agent in London also represented the writer Nick Hornby. And she, being a good agent, sent Nick a copy of the New Zealand edition of the novel and said, you know, if you like this, would you come up with a lovely endorsement to put on the cover of the UK edition? And he really did like the novel, and he did give us a lovely quote. But I also got a letter from him out of the blue saying, I've been the recipient of an American literary prize, the E.M. Forster Award, and one of the conditions of that prize is that I would spend the prize money on writing related travel in the States with a view to writing a book set in the States. And I don't really need the money, and I don't really think that I can put it to its intended use. And because I really loved your first book, I'd like to give you the money with the same proviso that you use it for writing related travel in the States. And so there was a big fat check for me, back when checks still existed. This is last century, remember? Big fat check for me in the envelope. And I just thought, wow, what an incredible thing to do. And it was so unexpected. So I ended up writing, my third novel ended up being set in Florida because of that. And I went to Florida and did all this research in the Everglades, and yeah, the transformation that novel was. So that was, yeah, quite mind-blowing.
Just a bit, yeah. The fact that it's Nick Hornby giving you money, like,
Yeah.
am I awake?
Yeah.
Yeah. You've had lots of endorsements from really famous people, though, eh? You are a very famous person yourself, obviously. But I remember Nick Hornby coming up, but who are some of the other people that have given you big shouts? Big names?
Most recently, Annie Proulx did for Remote Sympathy, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Louis de Bernier as well.
Yes, Louis de Bernier was the one that cropped up. Yeah.
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 Can't remember.
And I should think that if you gave them shouts, they would be very pleased to receive them all. Yeah. So the Axeman's Carnival, great favourite of ours at Wardini Books. We've had 2 book clubs discuss it now, and a resounding success. Yeah, because it's not, they're not always the book club books. It can be quite variable. So, narrated by Tama, the magpie, who's rescued by Marnie as a little fledgling chick. Why a magpie?
Well, I should say that I've shut Tama in the garage for the duration of our chat today, because he can be quite disruptive.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, he's making scenes all over Twitter quite regularly. So I'm sorry about that for anyone who's had to read that. Anyway, why a magpie? Well, I'd finished writing Remote Sympathy, and I was thinking, I want to do something really different for my next book. I've well and truly got Germany and German history out of my system. But I was thinking about one of my Germany books, The Wish Child, and thinking about the narrative that I'd chosen for that book. And I won't give the game away as to who that is for people who haven't read that book and might want to, but it's an unexpected voice. And I really liked what that allowed me to do, to kind of come at the story from a fresh angle. And so I thought, well, I'd really like to try and come up with another unusual narrator for this voice. And I have quite a punishing writing schedule, because I do have to fit it around my full-time lecturing job. And so every morning, like 7 days a week, I come to this office that we're in now, which is down the quiet end of our house, and that window looks out to rural land, or at least it used to until they started building a subdivision there. Anyway, that was kind of why we built the house the way that we did. And every morning I would come in here and I would open these windows, and would flood the sound, the song, the dawn chorus of the magpies. And it was a sound that I really loved, and that I kind of associated with my writing routine. And the magpies would also just kind of hop around on the grass just outside my window, and I would watch them. And there was something really kind of aware about them and also slightly sinister. They're kind of tricksters and jokers, but there's also something a little bit dark about them as well. And then one day it finally clicked that, oh, okay, this is what I've been looking for. It's right there. It's actually calling to me. It's singing to me right outside my window. Here's my narrator. Yeah. So that was where Tama came from. But also there were other kind of seeds. The way it always happens with my writing. I kind of tuck these things away, and then something kind of mysterious happens when I sit down to start a book, and certain of those things that I've tucked away sort of start to coalesce. So another one was the title of the book, The Axeman's Carnival. In 2008, so quite a long time ago, I'd been on a trip to a tapari in the South Island, tiny little town in the South Island, not far from where my husband grew up. And we went to the little local museum there, just the one-room museum, and they had some photos up of this event, this wood chopping event from sort of around the 1920s and 30s, called the Axeman's Carnival. And I thought, that's a really great title. I'll tuck that away because I know that's somehow related to my work. I'm not sure how. So yeah, tucked it away for about 12 years. And then when I was thinking about this kind of rural story and how, who the people would be around this magpie narrator, that came back to me. Yeah.
And everything's leading up to that carnival, isn't it, in the novel?
Yeah, everything leads up to the
building, and something.
Yeah, everything leads up to the day of the carnival, because Rob, who is one of the main characters in the book, is an axeman. He's a champion wood chopper, and he's won 9 golden axes in a row, and he is on a mission to win axe number 10. And he's defending his title at the annual Axeman's Carnival. And it's his wife, Marnie, who has rescued Tama.
Little baby Tama. So what kind of research did you do into that sort of folklore and the behaviours of magpies?
I read so many scientific papers and works on the Australian magpie. I read a great deal written by an Australian ornithologist, a woman called Gisela Kaplan, who's literally written the book on the Australian magpie. And so I know far more than I will ever need to know about the magpie anatomy and, the way that chicks learn vocalizations and, feather structure and territory and all of that. But, I kind of feel like writers need to familiarize themselves with their subject inside out, even though you won't kind of weave all that into the book because it would be quite boring, but you need to be able to kind of be speaking from the inside. One thing that I found really interesting in that research was learning about how magpies see. So their eyes are laterally placed on their heads, and they can see 2 things at once. And so I used that in the book. And the left eye is most often used for certain situations, and the right eye is most often used for different sorts of situations. So I have Tama kind of commenting on what he can see with his left eye and what he can see with his right eye. And that was really kind of useful for me in terms of the symbolism in the book, because it is a book of dualities. Tama's black and white. He can see with 2 eyes. He lives in 2 worlds, the human world and the wild. It's a book about violence, but it's also a book about love. So it felt like there were these kind of opposing tensions all through the book for me, and I enjoyed playing with that in lots of different ways.
So he is really, literally an omniscient narrator, isn't he? He's got the bird's eye view. He's got the 2 eyes looking all over the place. So how did you find his voice specifically? Because he's a bit of a misfit, Tama, isn't he? Like you say, he's in this world, but he's not, and he's in that world.
So I knew that I wanted him to be a mimic, because magpies are incredible mimics. So I wanted to have that voice, which I kind of play for laughs often. So everything that comes out of Tama's mouth in the book, everything that's in quotation marks, is something that he's heard, and you can comb back through the book and see where he's plucked that phrase from. And that's quite an unsophisticated voice, and he's often prone to kind of blurting the wrong thing at the worst moment, which I had a lot of fun with.
Yeah.
But then he has this other voice, the second voice, again, we've got a pairing. We've got two voices, and the other voice is the voice that he speaks to us, the reader, with, and it's his interior voice, his kind of magpie language voice, and that's quite sophisticated and poetic, and often constructs quite complex sentences. So I loved the idea that this creature who expresses himself in the human world quite crudely also has this really rich, eloquent inner life. Yeah,
absolutely, he does. And those, like the cat flap where he goes through it and he goes meow.
yeah.
There are some hugely comic moments, aren't there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was laughing to myself at my own jokes as I wrote the book, so I hope the readers are as well. Yeah. Like I said, he's a trickster. He's kind of the court jester, and he is the stone in Rob's shoe, which is kind of where the tension in the book comes. He needles Rob mercilessly, which is funny for the reader and absolutely infuriating for Rob, because Rob's a farmer. To him, magpies are pests. He thinks they should all be shot. He cannot stand the presence of this chattering fool in the marital home.
And in the marital bed on occasion
and
as
in
well.
the marital bed, yes. But he also knows, or comes to understand, that Tama is this global kind of phenomenon. He's got hundreds of thousands of followers online, and he starts to earn them serious money. And because the farmer's struggling to survive, Marnie and Rob recognise that Tama might be the thing that can save them financially, and potentially also save their very troubled marriage in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the dead girls on TV as well, that Rob's always watching The Beautiful Dead Girl, and it's in my head it's CSI Miami, where it's got
it's something like that.
It's got his shades on, and it's always a beautiful girl. But yeah, the commentary on that, I suppose, is the way that women are represented, and the way that
that was kind of just a sly way of talking about that very tired trope of the beautiful dead woman on those cop shows, and Rob, who's a violent man, not kind of seeing anything strange about him, gobbling down these shows and then turning around and beating his wife.
Yeah. Quite chilling, very chilling. So the social media aspect, I mean, there's some great comedy that comes from that, with the tourists that just turn up at the gate, and just think that they own Tama and Marnie, and in they come in the house. So does it make us all public property?
Yeah, it does. And I say that as someone who has a raging social media addiction. It's changed our lives in the course of a decade. And I know that as a cat owner, I am guilty of exploiting my pets for laughs online. Sometimes putting them in little costumes, sharing the love. But being aware that there's a really fine line between having a bit of a laugh and the animal kind of not being harmed in any way, and just tipping over that line into exploitation or into something quite unhealthy.
Yeah, and obsessive. Yeah. So you've written 5 novels?
Tama is number 8. Wait, let me see.
Oh, I'm well off.
Tama's number 7. Yes.
Yeah. And children's books too, Jiffy.
Yes, I've written 2 Jiffy the Cat books based on our cat Jiffy, who was just scratching at the door.
Oh.
Yeah, which were both written around the 2 World War II Germany books, and really felt to me like just a real breath of fresh air while I was kind of immersed in that dark historical material. It was a lovely change of pace to write books for very young children about Jiffy the cat.
Is that quite a different way of writing, I would imagine?
Yeah, it is. It is because you have to be aware of the other half of the story, which is the illustrations, of course.
Yeah.
And try not to overwrite and tell too much in the words, because a lot of the story can be told in the pictures as well. Yeah. But I loved writing the last Jiffy about Jiffy singing through the night to his exhausted family. He thinks that they want to hear his songs all through the night, and they just want to go to sleep.
Yeah. As they get older, I think cats do that. We've got a white cat too, and she's quite deaf now, so she just yells, screams.
Yeah, Jiffy's deaf in real life. He's not. That hasn't really been touched on in the books, but in real life, he's deaf. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a white cat thing, I think.
Yeah.
There is a question popped up. What was the hardest bit of the book to write or to get right? I'm presuming that's Axeman's Carnival related.
Definitely, I felt a great deal of pressure to get a high country sheep station right, because I'm a townie. I've never lived on a high country sheep station, and I was writing that book under lockdown, so I couldn't go there.
No.
But I had lived in Dunedin for quite a few years, and I know Central Otago fairly well, and also I had my husband at my beck and call, who had grown up on a high country sheep station, and I also had his mum's diaries from that time, and I was also lucky enough to be able to talk to about 5 Central Otago high country sheep station farmers who were so generous with their time, and I even sent them, bits of the book to read that dealt specifically with the landscape or with the, crutching or tailing or whatever in the farming calendar. And they told me which bits I'd got wrong. I wanted to get, in particular, the dog calls exactly right. So things like that. And it has been really gratifying to hear from people who are involved in that life, who've read the book, to say, yeah, it feels really genuine. So that was a relief.
Yeah, it did to me, but again, I'm a city girl, so I wouldn't have a clue really. Yeah, it felt very authentic and bloody hard work, actually. So your writing process. So I know you're really busy with family and with your full-time job teaching. So how do you fit it in? What's the process?
So I write early in the mornings, like I said, and that's 7 days a week. And then I also write in the evenings after our daughter Alice has gone to bed. And sometimes that extends to writing in bed. I've got this wonderful wedge of foam called the pillow pad that I can prop my laptop on in bed. And that's what I do 7 days a week, and I have no other life.
It's a very rich internal life, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of necessarily disciplined, because I find novel writing really hard work, holding something as complex as that in my head. And I just can't do it in dribs and drabs, because I lose the thread very easily. So I have to keep chipping away at it pretty much daily. Yeah.
Is it all on the computer, or have you got whiteboards and pieces of paper everywhere? And
I do use I have discovered the miracle of Post-its, which when I'm kind of in the planning stages, sort of extend all around the walls of the room, with just kind of nailing down which scenes happen when. And I do have loads and loads of little scraps of paper with notes to myself written on them. But no, mostly it's on the computer, just because I don't write in sequence and I change things around so much. Yeah.
So what are you working on currently? You've got a couple of irons in the fire.
Yeah. So in June this year, my next novel is coming out, and that's called Pet, which is set in 1984 and 2014, mostly in 1984 at Wellington Catholic Primary School, where dark things start to happen around one of the teachers there. It's told from the point of view of a 12-year-old girl who is kind of drawn to this very charismatic, glamorous new teacher who comes to the school. Kind of a, I suppose it's a literary thriller. Yeah, so that's that. And then I've just 2 days ago printed out the kind of drafty draft of the book after that, which I probably won't say too much about just yet.
Okay, we'll just have to be patient, and we've got Pet to look forward to in June, so that's good. Is that also with Te Harenga Waka?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Oh, great, yeah. Have you got a favourite book, baby? Out of the 8 and counting?
It's always the next one. It's always the one that I haven't finished, because that feels like the most urgent and the most beguiling. You know, I get the other ones out of my system, and then it's like, okay, that's finished, good, they can go out into the world now, they'll be fine. But it's always the next one. Yeah.
So you're published overseas as well, and so do you have to travel to do media, or is it mostly online now?
It's mostly online. I've just been invited to the Cheltenham Literature Festival in the UK in October, which is the world's longest running literary festival. So I'm really hoping that I can manage to get over for that. Yeah, it's really festivals that you would travel for these days rather than just interviews. Yeah.
And we've got a couple of minutes left. What do you wish I'd asked you that I've missed?
What do I wish I'd asked you? Gosh, that's a hard question. I know that I was going to say, when we were talking about Tama's voice, I was also going to say that one thing I really loved about writing that internal voice was how I tried to reflect the sound of Magpie Song in it, with lots of kind of repetition and rhythm and this kind of tumbling waterfall effect that you will know if you know what an Australian magpie sounds like. And so that was part of the challenge of writing his voice too, was kind of getting that musicality in there.
Yeah. He's such a complex character, isn't he? Because he's got this wide-eyed innocence, like you say, when he just says something really inappropriate at exactly the wrong time, or the right time, depending on how you look at it. And he's a sneak and a thief, but we love him just as much as Marnie loves him. And I think that's...
He's very real to me. He's absolutely real to me. When I was flying down to Queenstown for the Queenstown Festival, when I got there, I'd taken a photo from the window of the plane, and I tweeted about as Tama, saying, you know, hey, flying into Queenstown, this is what I saw on my way down, pretending that he'd been flying. And when I landed, the first thing I saw just on the grass beside the runway was a magpie. And honestly, I'm not lying. My very first thought was, oh, he's got here ahead of me. And then I stopped myself and thought, no, Catherine, no.
Okay.
He's in your head. You made him up.
It's kind of a wonderful type of insanity, though, isn't it? When your characters come to life like that. No, this is good. This is a good thing. Right, we are out of time, but this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, and thank you for the gift of your writing. And
thank you.
Very much look forward to reading Pet when that's out. We do love a good thriller, and all the very best for travels and publishing and future endeavours.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.